9 May 1945. Munich. In a school notebook scavenged from a ruined classroom, a 34-year-old municipal clerk named Karl M. writes a line he cannot say aloud: "We will eat only if we agree not to remember too much." He puts down the pencil. He listens. The city is noise and silence together. Crows on blasted rafters, feet in broken glass, the faint metallic clink each time women swing their picks into a wall of smashed brick. The mathematics begins at street level. Not the mathematics of victories and losses, the arithmetic of rooms and rations. He stands at the edge of Sonnenstrasse and takes in the rubble. 3/4 of Munich's buildings are damaged or gone. The old town is a ridge of brick and plaster, a broken drift that will be shaped into Schuttberg, the mounds of waste earth that will become artificial hills in the next decade. The Frauenkirche towers are blackened. The beer halls are shells. The city offices do not exist as rooms anymore. They exist in metal boxes and scorched binders that will be sorted by hand on makeshift tables, under tarps, where wind and grit fill lungs. Allied troops have entered and posted orders on whatever walls still stand. Curfew is 9 p.m. Identification papers are to be carried at all times. No gatherings. All radios to be surrendered, except for those registered with occupation authorities. There is fear of retaliation. There are whispers of rapes in the outer districts and in farms. There is fear of accusation. Your neighbor is your witness now. Your past is a dossier. On 10 May, Karl goes to the corner where the U.S. military government has posted the ration schedule: flour, bread, potatoes if the train cars make it past bombed bridges and pilfering hands. The arithmetic of hunger is on the sheet. It says 15500 calories. It means fewer. It means the winter will be worse. Occupation reports in the Office of Military Government United States, OMG Gus, will later call it a hunger winter, with average consumption in southern Germany plunging near 1,000 calories per person. The figure is a number and a taste. Thin soup. Ersatz coffee. Bread made with barley and beets. A line where he has to show his coupons and be told, again, that the meat is gone. He writes again that night. The boys are not home. I think of Joseph in the east. Is missing the same as dead in a ledger? The city's bulletin boards are covered with notices. Missing. Seeking. Last seen in Königsberg, Stettin, Pomerania. A postcard from him in 1943, then nothing. Women stand with babies on their hips reading names and trying to turn them into faces. Trains arrive with men whose eyes are the color of mud, Russian soil still on their boots. Trains arrive empty too. People wait for those. Trümmerfrauen appear like an army. They are everywhere. Women in headscarves, sleeves rolled, working in teams. They scrape mortar from bricks and stack the bricks in neat piles. They pass baskets of debris along human chains and tell each other about the best way to separate wood from plaster in gloves made from old curtains. A photographer from the Army Signal Corps records them on 12 May and files the picture under Civic Reconstruction, German. In her diary, a 28-year-old named Lotta writes, "We lift and carry. There is no room for grief because the trolley needs to run again." Oral histories in later decades will make them symbols, but now they are what keeps the city from sinking into its own dust. The mathematics of rubble is 75 million cubic meters in Western Germany. The units can be counted and hauled. Grief cannot. The first US units in Munich enforce a ban on fraternization. It does not hold. They are armed and well-fed men, and they come from a country that shipped them rations in cans and boxes stamped with US Army quartermaster seals. Some trade freely and some extort. Cigarettes become a currency that is simple to reckon. 1 carton of Lucky Strikes equals a pair of shoes. 10 cigarettes equal a pound of butter if you can find it. Cigarettes are not heavy. They are light, and they are medium of exchange in a society where money is paper that buys nothing. The black market is visible near the Hauptbahnhof. Men stand with coats open to display watches. Women with a certain look make circles with fingers to signal they have cigarettes. Allied intelligence summaries record the traffic and complain that the black market threatens to outcompete regulated distribution. The arithmetic of hunger is not deterred by official displeasure. On 16 May, a team of U.S. officers arrive at the improvised office of the Stadtbauamt, the city building authority, of which Karl is nominally a clerk. They unseal an envelope and read orders. All Nazi emblems to be removed from public buildings. All street names associated with the regime to be changed. They requisition part of the office to use as their own. They ask for lists of staff. They bring forms. The forms are printed on good paper. The forms have 131 questions and no patience. The forms are the Fragebogen of denazification. Karl takes one. He fills in name, date of birth, party affiliations, memberships. He marks Das Deutsche Arbeitsfront, the Nazi labor organization, because his foreman at the yard insisted in 1938. He does not mark SA. He did not wear the brown shirt, he tells himself. He attended 2 marches, he knows, but as a spectator. He underlines that his father was a social democrat before 1933. He writes that he was never in the SS, never in the party, never in any of the severely incriminating organizations. He asks his neighbor for an affidavit, an Entlastungsjourneys, saying that he helped no one to be harmed. A woman in the back room of the Sprüchkammer will someday place his file in a stack labeled Mitläufer, follower, not an offender, not exonerated, someone in between. The mathematics of guilt requires boxes and lines. Denazification hearings in Bavaria take place in cramped rooms with cold radiators. People wear their coats. The Sprüchkammern are staffed by Germans under Allied supervision. The process is judicial and administrative at once. Major offenders, Hauptschuldig. Offenders, Belastet. Lesser offenders, Minder Belastet. Followers, Mitläufer. Exonerated, Entlastet. The categories are proof and compromise combined. Bundesarchiv records will later show the numbers. Millions fill the questionnaires. 3.66 million cases in the US zone are decided. Less than 1% fall into the top 2 categories. The majority, more than half, are Mitläufer and Entlastet. The system seeks truth but needs stability. Germany cannot be administered by ghosts. The mathematics of guilt is also the arithmetic of administration. On 7 June 1945, a file is opened in the Staatsarchiv München labeled Sprüchkammerakte, KM. The file records that Karl attended a party rally. It records a witness saying, he kept his head down and signed things. It records a signature and the fee, a small fine of 50 Reichsmark, payable in currency that will be worthless by winter. The document is heavy and light at once. Heavy because it will follow him through jobs. Light because it does not force him from his desk. He feels relief. He feels shame he cannot talk about. Later he will think that the relief is the price paid for forgetting. He will also think that the alternative to be thrown out of his work with a brother missing and a mother needing coal would have endangered both his family and the fragile order they are trying to build. The arithmetic refuses simple totals. The immediate aftermath is movement. Movement of troops, movement of survivors, movement of people expelled from the East. In September 1945, a train from the Sudetenland arrives in Munich-laden cars with mattresses and trunks. A sign tacked on a door reads, Umsiedler, resettled, resettled. Refugees spill onto platforms that still reek of ash. 11 or 12 million German-speaking people will be pushed westward from what is now Poland, Czechoslovakia, Hungary. They carry what they can. They have stories of being beaten at the railhead, of leaving with an hour's notice, of being told to take only 10 kilograms per person. They also have stories of what they said in 1938, when walls were built around Jewish stores in their towns, and they were grateful for others' disappearances. A woman named Alina from Breslau writes in an oral history decades later, "I told my children that the Poles were cruel. I did not tell them how we lived before 1939. The arithmetic of displacement is a number so large it erases the sum of individual distances. The city does not have room. Housing allocation notices are written and delivered. The Wohnraumbewirtschaftung office assigns strangers to spare bedrooms. Karl's apartment is 2 rooms, a kitchen, and a corner where a tiled stove still functions if fed. In November 1945, an officer comes with a typed order. A family from Silesia is to be placed in the 2nd room. The father worked a dairy near Gleiwitz. The mother has a baby and a girl aged 10. The written order uses the word Einweisung assignment. It is not a suggestion. Karl clears his sister's old chest from the room and stacks his own books in the kitchen. This is the arithmetic of scarce rooms. 2 families equal 1 apartment. 1 stove equals 4 adults and 2 children. 1 bathroom equals a schedule. 1 job equals 2 mouths. The only thing that multiplies is fatigue. "So you aren't a Nazi?" asks the Silesian woman quietly when she stands in the doorway, a note lodged between curiosity and fear. Karl says, "No, because there is no other answer possible in the new arrangement." Later he writes in his notebook, "Our home is a ledger. Dates, rations, disputes about washing days. I prefer not to think about what he did. He prefers not to think about what I did. The arithmetic reduces itself. Peace is an equation of silence. In a camp at Feldafing, 17 kilometers south of Munich, Jewish survivors live in barracks under the watch of American troops who are both guards and protectors. The camp was established on 20 July 1945. There are workshops and schools. There are committees arguing for emigration to Palestine and to America. There are funerals for names no one can place with faces. There are weddings. Occasional visitors from Munich's rubble pass the gate. They see people with armbands who do not look like the ghosts in their imaginations. They look healthy compared to Germans. They have the right to a heavier ration. It causes resentment, small and mean. The US Army's intelligence summaries describe the widely held view among Germans that Jews are privileged. The mathematics of justice looks like inequality when you do not understand the starting points. Near Dachau, the grounds of the former concentration camp are repurposed for some months as an internment center for SS and Nazis, and then as housing for refugees. Tours are organized for Germans beginning in mid-1945. Some are forced. They are shown the crematorium and the barracks. They see shoes, suitcases, ash. They say, "We did not know." Some did not. Many did. It was ambient. It was the smell in the air when trains went through on hot days. It was whispers that children were told not to repeat. Karl is sent by his department to assess a building near the camp for possible use as a storehouse for reconstruction materials. He walks past the gate with its words, "Arbeit macht frei," that are the worst sentence written in the German language. He writes later, "I stood outside and thought, I am not like them. And then I could not step into the yard. The work does not stop. If anything, it grows. Bricks must be cleaned at a rate that will fill tens of thousands of pallets. Steel must be salvaged. Bridges must be rebuilt. The simplest map has to be redrawn because streets have become zones of destruction. Municipal minutes preserved in the Stadtarchiv show meetings where men and women argue about using scarce cement for a schoolhouse or a sewer. They write priorities, winter shelter, food distribution, basic hygiene. The mathematics of reconstruction is material, man-hours, transport routes, and weather forecasts. It is also the number of trained engineers who can hold a slide rule in a hand that is numb from hunger. Winter of 1946-47 freezes everything. The Elbe and the Rhine choke with ice. Coal is scarce. Coal is war and peace. Both, and coal keeps food from spoiling and keeps children from crying all night. People tear down wooden staircases in ruined buildings to feed stoves. In February 1947, the USSR military governor notes elevated mortality among the elderly and the very young. In Karl's building, it is quieter than usual during the nights, until sirens from other cities carry on the wind and remind everyone that sirens do not always sound alarms for bombs. Sometimes they announce shortages, curfews, illness. A woman on the third floor dies, and her room is assigned again. The arithmetic of rooms continues. The black market reaches its height. You can buy anything there if you have cigarettes. A watch with a face scratched by debris is worth 20 American cigarettes if it runs. Potatoes are precious. Sugar is a rumor. The police crack down and take bribes. Soldiers buy because they can. The words compensation and compromise become the vocabulary of daily life more than guilt and justice, even though both words stand behind everything like the dull outline of ruins behind a reconstructed facade. On 23rd of May 1947, a memorandum from the Bavarian Interior Ministry complains of acute tensions between local populations and expellees over housing allocation, citing a case in Rosenheim where a mattress was cut in two to satisfy a court ruling. The arithmetic of scarcity is spiteful because the numbers are too small. In Karl's stairwell, the Silesian family gets a letter that their farmhouse has been occupied by Poles who now possess legal documents stating the farm is theirs. The man sits on the stairs and stares at the banister. He says, "What is mine lives in my head." Later he writes the same in a letter to his brother in the British zone, and the letter is opened and copied by censors. The copy sits now, decades later, in a Bundesarchiv box marked housing. Denazification continues, but it changes shape. What begins as a thorough attempt becomes an administrative grind. The questionnaires fill shelves. People write affidavits for each other. Persilschein they're named for a laundry detergent because they whiten the file. Employers need experience. Teachers must teach. Engineers must calculate loads. Doctors must teach. Engineers must stitch wounds, set bones, and deliver babies. Travelers lock their past in suitcases when they go to job interviews. In 1948 and 1949, policy shifts toward amnesty. The 131er Gesetz of 1951 will allow many former civil servants to be reinstated. The mathematics of guilt intersects with the arithmetic of talent. To build bridges, you need the engineer who designed the last bridge, even if he wore a party pin. The moral sum does not come out evenly. That is how sums work when you are not counting apples but human choices and errors. There are moments of recognition and moments of refusal. In 1946, Munich cinemas show newsreels of the Nuremberg trials. The film voiceover is dry. Names are read out, crimes enumerated like lines itemized in a ledger. The camera shows faces. People in the theater look at their shoes. One man stands and leaves. A woman cries without sound. A report from the U.S. Information Services Division records that audiences express fatigue and a desire to turn away. Some say the films are propaganda. Some say it is unbearable to see again. In house-to-house interviews conducted by OM Gus, a not insignificant number say, The Jews exaggerate. A sentence that can be documented and is therefore more shameful for being the subject of a statistic. The mathematics of memory is not additive. If some forget, more doesn't remember for them. The economy shifts. It does not rise from ruins, as a banner would have it. It pushes and writhes upward in starts and failures. The bizone merging the American and British zones forms in January 1947. Policy hums into coordination. The Marshall Plan passes in Washington in April 1948, but shipments begin earlier. Crates stamped ERP, European Recovery Program, arrive at the rail yards. They hold machinery, raw cotton, powdered milk, parts. A machine tool factory in Munich's outskirts that once made parts for Messerschmitt now takes delivery of American lathes. The owner takes down a flag from his office wall and puts up a chart showing output goals. On 20 June 1948, the currency reform. At designated stations, each person receives 40 Deutschmarks. The Reichsmark ends. The next morning, shop windows fill with goods that had been hidden. The anthropologist writing a report for the US Army calls it the miracle of shop windows. It is not a miracle. It is accounting. Money worth something pulls goods out of closets. Prices adjust. The black market recedes but does not vanish because cigarettes remain a better way to translate hunger into food when you do not trust that tomorrow's prices will be the same. Karl holds his new notes in his hand. He goes to a bakery. He sees butter. He buys it. He tastes it. And for a moment he does not think about the lists of dead posted in the rat house. He thinks about the sensation of salt and fat. The mathematics of hunger is tactile, not written. He finds steady work in the new order. He is appointed to a team in the Wiederaufbauamt, the Office of Reconstruction, that will assign bricks to projects and authorize permits. He sits at a table and reads applications. 1 school, 3 apartment houses, a factory floor for a plant that used to make artillery shells and would now produce washing machine drums. He stamps the pages. He approves the pounds of cement according to a schedule keyed to population and priority. He does the arithmetic of cubic meters and load-bearing walls. He also begins to learn a new arithmetic, the exchange between silence and stability. His immediate superior is a thin man with a limp and a measured voice. The man's file says, Mitläufer. The man's wrist shows a faded ink stain from bureaucratic work. He tells Karl, we will not speak of 1938. He says it by not saying it aloud. He says it by anticipating Karl's questions and placing the file with the party pin back in the drawer. He clears his throat and calls in the next applicant, an expellee who has gathered affidavits in triplicate. The room is warm. The motions are smooth. The moral line in that room runs under the table, not on it. Textbooks arrive in schools. They are printed on cheap paper, but they are printed. A copy of Geschichte für die Mittelschule in 1952 devotes a chapter to the war. It is titled The Years of Hardship. It mentions the bombings and expulsions. It mentions heroism and endurance. It says little about the names of places like Treblinka and Sobibor. It uses the passive voice. Many suffered. Many died. In a later section, it tells of the new democracy, the basic law, and the dignity of man, which is inviolable. It is not untrue, it is incomplete. A memorandum from the Bavarian Ministry of Education suggests that controversial material be introduced gradually to avoid traumatizing the youth. The arithmetic of innocence is administered by school committees. Karl's son goes to school with a boy whose father never returned. He hears adults talk about bombs and hunger, and he feels a flare of pride that his father works in a city office, building the future. He brings home a worksheet to color that shows a building site. Cranes. bricks stacked in a triangle. On the top line, the teacher wrote, "We build anew." Karl pins it to the wall. He thinks of his own worksheet, the Fragebogen he filled 3 years ago, and he feels the heaviness of a different set of answers. He begins to keep a small notebook. He writes dates and names. He records when the Silesian family moved out, relocated to a new housing estate on the city's edge, a Siedlung financed partly by ERP funds and partly by bonds floated by the city. He records when an old colleague returned to the office after a suspension. He writes, without elaboration, that the man's Spruchkammer file showed him to have been third deputy of something that took minutes when people were arrested. The man is good at estimating the weight of bricks in a truck. The hierarchy needs that. The math supports leaving other numbers unfactored. In 1949, the Federal Republic of Germany is declared in Bonn. The Basic Law is promulgated in May. Elections follow. People who never said the word democracy without sneering now say it with pride. People who resisted gently, who did not join, who kept to themselves, raise their heads a little higher on the street. We are now a state of law, the radio says. And yet, in 1951, the Gesetz zu Artikel 31 des Grundgesetzes is passed, providing for the re-employment of those who lost positions due to denazification. Municipal bulletins fill with names of reinstated employees. An addendum names judges. The arithmetic of justice rounds to the nearest manageable number. DP camps empty for other shores. Ships depart from Bremerhaven carrying survivors to New York and Haifa. A photograph in an Allied report shows men smiling and raising their hands in a gesture that is not a salute but a greeting. The caption reads, "Departing refugees." The old camp at Feldafing becomes a German school again. The ghost of its recent past lingers like frost. The terms Wiedergutmachung and reparations enter the language as real payments between states and people. In 1952, the Luxembourg Agreements are signed between the Federal Republic and Israel for the compensation of material losses. Adenauer calls it a moral duty. Demonstrators in the streets of Munich carry placards saying, "No money to the Jews." The police protect the parade. Occupation reports note the ambivalence in public opinion. Ambivalence is arithmetic without integers. The Cold War sharpens lines across maps. The Berlin blockade in 1948-49 forces everything into binary, East and West, freedom and communism. Choices are compartmentalized in international frameworks. Within apartments and offices, choices remain smudged. The police reorganize. The intelligence services reorganize. The economic miracle, Wirtschaftswunder, comes with a footnote that men who once wore uniforms now wear suits in advisory roles. Foreign investment arrives, filtered through ERP and then through private banks. The Bundesanstalt für Arbeit tracks the labor needed. Unemployment falls. Wages rise. A refrigerator enters Karl's home. He turns the dial and feels like a master of a small, cold planet that reassures him that his son will drink milk not so long after it is bought. In 1953, an amnesty law diminishes sentences for many crimes committed in the Nazi era. The argument is that time, service to the new state, and integration provide a framework for leniency. The result is that men who once shouted orders in courtyards keep schedules in ministries. The mathematics of guilt shifts to the calculus of usefulness. That does not erase guilt. It does not acknowledge it every day either. Karl watches a procession on Volkstrauertag, the People's Day of Mourning. He stands as the names of dead soldiers are read. He hears no names of deported neighbors, not in that ceremony. There is a different ceremony in the synagogue, and fewer attend. In the summer of 1954, when the German football team wins the World Cup in Bern, the streets fill with shouting. Wir sind wieder wer, people say. We are someone again. It is a sentence that carries a burden and a hope. Karl smiles. He lets his son stay out late under a cloud of confetti and cigarette smoke. He does not think of the day in 1933 when he watched a similar street celebration with different flags. Memory is a stubborn country. You know its borders and cross them anyway because there are small pleasures that do not ask for papers. Bundesarchiv holdings contain letters sent to editorial pages in 1955, 1956, 1957, complaining that school curricula emphasize German victimhood. Some writers ask for more pages on the crimes. Others call for less. Editorial boards choose a tone tailored to readership. The same archives hold directives from the press control of the Allies that end in those years. The German press is again German. It has grown bolder. It has also grown wary of pushing too far into the past, lest it lose advertisers and readers who would prefer to think about cars and elections. The arithmetic of newspapers is subscription numbers and ad revenue. It shifts averages toward comfort. The expellees organize politically. They form the Bund der Vertriebenen. They hold rallies calling for the right to return to their homes in the East. They brandish keys on strings. They speak of a Germany beyond the new eastern border, a map of memory that no longer corresponds to the map in schoolrooms. They speak the righteousness of their losses. They sometimes speak in ways that erase the backstory. The backstory is an arithmetic too. It includes 1938 and 1939, and all the subtraction that followed. In the office where Karl works, property claims begin to reach the desk from Jews who survived and from their heirs abroad. The envelopes are thin and stiff. They often contain photographs of shops' fronts with signs stripped, shelves bare. We request compensation, the letters say. We request restitution of the house at Klenzestrasse, others say. The files are complex. Former tenants still live there. New owners bought under laws that were legal then and are considered void now. Lawyers use Latin. The practical arithmetic is, where will this family live if the house is returned? City Council minutes list a schedule for restitution. Public notices are printed with dates. Meetings in rooms with clean floors stretch into the night. There is a smell of stale coffee and the floor wax that suggests order has replaced disaster. Yet the moral numbers on the page do not add up to justice. They add up to settlement. A woman comes in with papers proving that her husband owned a factory before 1938. He died in France. She survived in hiding. She now lives in New York. Her cousin stands in the office. He says, "We do not want to throw anyone into the street." He also says, "There was an auction in 1939. Do you know who bought?" Karl looks at records that exist and at gaps where numbers used to be. He writes, "Search not successful," and feels the old equation again, order versus admission. He does not say to his superior that the man who chaired that 1939 auction now chairs a subcommittee on winter fuel. By 1957, Denmark, the Netherlands, and other countries stop feeding German laborers through ERP. It is a sign that the emergency phase of reconstruction has ended. GDP numbers look like a rising staircase. People talk about vacations on the Adriatic as if that were a normal German word. In the office, a chart on the wall shows the number of apartments completed each year. The line climbs. Each dot is a family with a bed and a place to hang a coat. Each dot hides arguments about who deserved the place more. In 1959, a small ceremony is held at the site of a former forced labor camp that supplied a nearby factory. The mayor reads something. A plaque is revealed. It speaks of victims of war and tyranny. It does not name Jews or Poles or Russians. It does not name Germans who did anything. It does not name the factory. It is an addition to the city's topography that allows pedestrians to walk by with a nod. The moral arithmetic is still in draft. The words are general. The names are private. The Ulm Einsatzgruppen trial in 1958, where police officers are tried for killings in the East, penetrates further. The radio describes it. The press prints more than before. The tone shifts. There is a social cost to learning. Karl listens in the kitchen. His son, now a young man, sits with a book of poems on the table. "Did you know?" he asks. The question threads between them like wire. Karl says, "We ate potatoes, we worked, we kept our heads down." He does not say what he wrote in 1945. He does not show the boy the sentence. He does not say, "We decided to not remember when it was the price for bread." He knows the boy will pay another price if he knows. He knows he will also gain something. That is how arithmetic works when every sum includes pain. By the early 1960s, a new generation asks different questions. They have read new textbooks. They have traveled. They have had teachers who were not soldiers. Their inquiries do not necessarily accuse. They insist. The basic laws promise that the dignity of man is inviolable begins to mean looking at the past in a different light. Some older men retire. Some give interviews. Oral history projects collect voices. A woman who was a Trümmerfrau says into a microphone, "We built and did not talk because the children needed milk." A former judge, asked about his 1937 sentences, says, "I applied the law as it stood." He is now retired. The interviewer writes a paper. The sums change in their exponents. Karl's notebook continues. He records his mother's death and the arrival of a new filing system. He notes that the Silesian family's daughter married a machinist and moved into one of the new blocks with a view toward a green strip planted where a factory once stood. He writes, in a rare moment of narrative, of the day he went back to the street where his brother Joseph might have returned, if he had returned, and saw nothing that reminded him of anything except his own footsteps. The arithmetic of missing is open-ended. Is missing the same as dead in a ledger? He wrote in 1945. In 1962, he writes, "No ledger is big enough to hold the word." The numbers of the economy keep moving. The numbers of the past hold. The pen in his hand sometimes scratches loudly on the page. He buys a better pen. It glides. He writes in 1963, watching a television screen show a wall in Berlin and men with guns on top. He writes, "The war did not begin in 1939 and it has not ended in 1945, not in here." He taps the page. He looks at his old Fragebogen, creased and thin, retained in his file by mistake when most were destroyed or returned. He reads the questions. "Have you ever denounced anyone?" He checked, no. He remembers that he told a friend in 1937 not to post the flag because he was the landlord and the block warden would mark the address. He told out of caution. The friend hung the flag because what else can you do when arithmetic is applied to safety? The questions ask for absolutes. Life lives in gradations. In 1965, he goes to a ceremony at the new memorial for victims at the site of the former concentration camp. The plaque is specific now. It uses words that name the dead and the killers. It is harder to walk by. He stands there longer than he planned. He looks for a familiar name. He does not find one. He writes that night, "I wanted a name to hold, and I am ashamed of that. There are more names here than I can ever hold. I held a ration card close to my heart for years. The card was a name too, and it was mine." He watches his son, who is now in a group that reads Brecht and newspapers that are edgy, argue about the past with friends. He hears in their voices both arrogance and hope. He hears a language of "we ought to have," which is intolerable to those who know that "we had to" is sometimes how you go to bed alive. He hears also that "never again" does not mean never speak. It can mean learn to speak about what you did and learn to listen to what you didn't. The mathematics of responsibility shifts generations. The variables remain. He goes to his desk on a day in late autumn and finds a restitution file on top of the stack. It concerns a grocery at Gabelsberger Strasse. The records are complete. The sequence is clear. So is the theft. He recommends return to the rightful heirs and writes a cover letter explaining the practical steps. He knows the family that now runs the store. They are good people. Returns are never pure. The arithmetic of justice debits one account and credits another, and leaves a remainder that is headache and regret. He writes anyway. He signs the letter with a hand that does not shake. Years pass. He retires. The city is a die.